Brave New World welcomes you back to our second session of the day. Those of you who missed out on our earlier sessions with the outstanding Margaret Atwood, Piku Iyer, Siddharth Mukherjee, Tina Brown, Peter Carey, Jhumpa Lahiri, Edmund de Waal, and Alain de Botton, amongst many others, including the earlier episode today, The Wet Markets, Illegal Wildlife Trade, Species Extinction, and Human Health by Vivek Menon and Grace Gabriel in conversation. You can catch these on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, and on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. We're delighted to welcome on board our official radio partner, Red FM, Bajate Raho. Our second session for the day is Underland, a deep time journey. In his first book, Mountains of the Mind, award-winning travel writer Robert Macfarlane wrote about the fear and fascination generated in the human heart by height. In his latest masterpiece, Underland, he explores the deepest depths of the earth in conversation with William Dalrymple. Robert is the author of internationally best-selling and prize-winning books about nature, people, and place, including Underland, The Old Ways, Landmarks, and with Jackie Morris, The Lost Words, a spell book. His books have been widely adapted for film, music, television, radio, and stage, and translated into many languages. In 2017, the American Academy of Arts and Letters awarded him the E.M. Foster Prize for Literature. He is a fellow of Emmanuel College, Cambridge. Speaking with him today is William Dalrymple, co-director of the Jaipur Literature Festival. He's the best-selling author of In Xanadu, City of Jinns, From the Holy Mountain, Age of Kali, White Mughals, The Last Mughal, 9 Lives, Return of a King, and Kohinoor. He has won many awards, including the Wolfenson Prize for History, the Hemingway, the Thomas Cook, the Duff Cooper Memorial Prize. He's also been awarded the prestigious President's Medal by the British Academy. His latest bestseller is The Anarchy, The Relentless Rise of the East India Company, and Forgotten Masters, Indian Painting for the East India Company. Please do remember to comment and ask questions by typing it in the comment section. William will ask Robert of these. To follow our handles, JLF Litfest on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get notified on the upcoming sessions. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can find us on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. And in case we drop off, which is also quite likely, hang in there. I promise we'll be back. Ladies and gentlemen, Underland, a deep time journey. Rob Macfarlane in conversation with William Dalrymple.
Well, Rob, welcome finally to the Jaipur Literature Festival. We've been trying to get you for 10 years. It's taken a pandemic, the most terrible natural disaster to strike the human race in decades to get you here.
Thank you, Willie. Yes, I haven't had to travel very far. The 10 yards to the bottom of the garden is the commute, but I'm very, very glad to be in conversation with you all and with the audience today. So thank you for having me.
We're going to have to finally extract a promise from you to leave all your poor students at Cambridge and come and talk to us next January if there is a festival.
Yeah, indeed.
Manage it. Rob, we're here today to talk about your most recent book, your great masterpiece, Underland, which I had the pleasure of reading the proof of exactly this time last year. I remember reviewing it in Tashkent. My Facebook tells me it was literally exactly a year ago today. And since then, this book has been a spectacular success around the globe, and I think broken America for you. I mean, it's been a huge hit there too.
Yes, it's certainly found readers in America. I think it has a global perspective and a sort of depth of time that means it's reached across national borders a little more than I was expecting. Yeah,
and it's also, I mean, sort of reached across time in the sense that you took a considerable time to write it. This was not something you dashed off in your spare time.
No, that's right. I mean, I think it took about six years of writing, basically, and getting on for a decade of thinking. And its subtitle is A Deep Time Journey, but I when my editors came knocking saying, "Where is that book?" I had the deep time excuse, but it wore off fairly quickly. But yeah, no, it probably began in 2009 when the Chilean miners were, or 2010 when the Chilean miners were trapped underground when the Icelandic volcano Eyjafjallajökull exploded, and when the Deepwater Horizon
your Icelandic pronunciation
catastrophe occurred in the Gulf, and those three events where things that were buried forced their way catastrophically to the surface were the first time. That was the first time I really began thinking about this idea of unburial, as I call it in the book. And I guess that's a little bit where we are now, this sense of repressed forces within Earth systems, within natural systems, rising up from what we thought were their contained spaces to overwhelm and destroy our surface systems, as it were. And the virus has done that.
Do you really feel that is the case? I mean, this isn't just, the human race has been dealing with pandemics from the Black Death and earlier ones for millennia. I mean, but there is a school of thought that has said that this is to do with the way we're wrecking the planet, with the way that we're mistreating nature. Which of the two schools do you belong to?
Well, on the one hand, I'm always suspicious of modern exceptionalism. And like many people, I returned to read Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year early in the lockdown and found myself eerily chilled by the resonances, the rich leaving the cities to head for their country houses, carrying the plague with them as they went in fear of the cities getting locked down. The probing
before that,
the probing of inequality, inequality as a comorbidity within pandemic scenarios. All of these things are absolutely familiar across pandemic history, but I think what sets this one apart is that it comes very hard on the heels of a set of other smaller epidemics which have been warnings, and the globalized nature. HIV, SARS, MERS, and onwards. And I think we are in what's being called the viral storm now, and I think it's going to blow hard through this century.
Let's go back to Underland. I think it'd be very good to come back to this at the end, but just Underland. I mean, we've always known you. I mean, you started your career with Mountains of the Mind, and you're very much associated with sort of climbing up peaks, backpack on your back, and sort of waving to humanity from the top of some Cairngorm. But this is the opposite. This is going down deep into the bowels. Why? I mean, was that for pleasure or for balance, or because I mean some of them are pretty hairy trips that you've made.
Yeah. My heart is in the mountains, certainly, and that's where I began with that great puzzle of why we have taken to climbing mountains within and the answer is actually a very modern one. It's a very young answer, really. Mountain climbing is a function of modernity. It's about 300 years old as a human habit. Prior to that, worship was directed at mountains, fear, reverence, but predominantly from a distance. The urge to go low, though, the urge to go into darkness, is as old as the human species. And I realized this very early on, that I was tangling with much bigger and older and deeper mysteries when I was dealing with darkness and what lies beneath us. So the first handprints, red stenciled handprints on the walls of Spanish caves, have recently been controversially dated by a new uranium thorium dating technique to around 64,000 years ago. And that is before we think that anatomically modern Homo sapiens gets to that region. So that this is arguably Neanderthal art.
Really?
So
we have them in India too. Bembedkar is, I think, what, 30,000 or
30,000. And they go further back. I mean, that's the European record, as it were, and is under dispute among scientists at the moment, I should say. But yes, we in Sulawesi, and so this urge to go into the darkness, to enter the Underland as a place of vision, where in the dark you see things better than you see them in the light, and as a place where you store what's precious, whether that's art or marks or the the bodies of the dead. And it's also where you get rid of what you fear the most.
And you take it right back to obviously the origins of literature, to Enkidu and Gilgamesh.
Yes.
The underworld.
Yeah. Yes. So there's this addition to the Epic of Gilgamesh, as you suggest, from Sumeria, 2300 BCE, which has Enkidu making this underworld journey, incredible underworld journey down a river of darkness, getting hammered by hailstones to pick up precious objects for his master Gilgamesh. And down there he sees the dead children, the lost soul.
The children of Gilgamesh.
Well, I've looked back at the translation. It's slightly ambiguous, but he comes back up with news without the precious objects, but with news of the dead, and that's the pattern that's come back and back in so many cultures across the millennia.
Akram Khan, in a new work, has used these new Gilgamesh tablets of the underworld to create the most extraordinary dance piece.
Wow.
And it also contains deforestation, the first deforestation in literature, and the goddess, it strikes back at Gilgamesh for destroying her trees. It's a very
so Gilgamesh and Enkidu head off to the cedar forest, and they can you still hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yeah, they head off to the cedar forest, and where Humbaba, the great god, guards the cedar forest, and they set about these glorious cedar trees with their axes. In lockdown, one of the things I've been doing is beginning to write a series of songs with the musician Johnny Flynn, based around the Epic of Gilgamesh. So we're yeah. So our minds
are a fabulous musician. He's a wonderful songwriter.
So I'm excited to hear about this dance version too, that you just mentioned.
It has spectacular music, but very different from Johnny Flynn's folky sounds. It's sort of industrial, sort of terrible hell-like beats. It's amazing.
Incredible, right?
It's the best modern dance piece I've ever seen.
Wow, right. I need to see this. This is part of the Underland, the ongoing remaking of Underland myths, which we're still engaged in. And I see science, as I'll just say, I see much of modern science very much as a form of modernized mythology. This idea, Bruno Latour's idea, we've never been modern. I mean, glaciologists are magnificent fathomers of the underworld. They plunge their ice cores deep back in time and deep under the ice to bring us news of climate futures. And again, this characteristic dynamic of the underworld, that you go down into it and you think you're going down into the past, but actually you're foretelling the future by means of that journey down.
You also, as well as the Gilgamesh and the journey back, you do look forward into the future. Indeed, you end the book with this very talk about it. I would.
Well, yes. Well, the book ends in two places. One of them is a little spring site just up the hill from where I'm sitting now in Cambridge, where I was just 2 days ago, which is really the sort of hopeful brief.
I saw your Instagram post with the water bubbling up and Nan Shepherd quote.
Yes, and that's a place of wonderful hope, I think, where all that is living rises from out of the earth. And so spring sites, as we all know, are some of the most magical places in the landscape. So that's where the book truly ends. But just before that, I descend the world's only successfully constructed deep geological repository for high-level nuclear waste, and that's in Finland. It's on an island called Olkiluoto on the Baltic Sea. And this repository is called Onkalo, the hiding place. And down there, Finland has, with great future vision, constructed the longest lasting tomb that a human organization has ever attempted to construct. It's designed to last ideally 100,000 years, which, I mean, if we look at our architecture, some of our most durable architectures in India or Egypt or Stonehenge, we get a sense of what an ambitious project that is. And it's designed to last that long because it has to hold in perfect storage the most lethal waste that we have created as a species, high-level nuclear waste. And I descended that 400 meters vertically deep down, an astonishing, powerful space.
One of your other most extraordinary journeys was under and perhaps the most frightening, oddly was the when you nearly get stuck under the Paris metro, deep down, and the hair-raising moment when you find yourself stuck in a shaft.
Yes. That when you asked about pleasure, that was definitely not the high point of the pleasure of researching this book. But yeah, so
Paris, on my next trip to Paris to follow you, I have to say.
Paris, the southern part of Paris, particularly just on the south bank of the Seine, is really two cities, one stacked upon the other. The city of light above the city of shadow, but most people don't know the city of shadow because the quarry network out of which the above ground Paris was hewed, was repurposed in the 18th century to become a vast ossuary, a vast bone and body storage site for the swelling, bursting above ground cemeteries of Paris. So there are hundreds of miles of connecting tunnelway down there, some of which are filled with bones, some of which are filled with water, some of which are partially collapsed. It's on several layers,
and some of which seem to be filled with hipsters, judging by your.
Well, yeah, there are party zones. There are the cataphile, the catacomb lovers who head down there. I'd be very interested to know what's happening to the catacombs during COVID-19, whether there are people taking refuge down there, living down there throughout lockdown, escaping down manhole covers into it. But it's always been the resistance was down there during the Second World War, and indeed the Wehrmacht was in the catacomb, really? Sheltering from British bombs. So it's always been a place of shelter, like many underground spaces, and I bet it is now as well.
One of the themes that runs through your writing in old ways, in wild places, and in this book, is the idea that nature's just sort of waiting to take back what is really its. There's that wonderful passage in the Wild Places: "The wild prefaced us, and it outlives us. Human cultures will pass given time, of which there is sufficiency. The ivy will snake and unrig our flats and terraces as it scattered the Roman villas." Is this what we're seeing now, do you think?
Well, if we think of this as the great pause, and I think there will be a forceful resumption after this pause. I think we're being utopian if we think there will be profound long-term changes following it. Though every change for the good will need to be fought for hard. And with detail, I think, but there is opportunity now. But yes, the pause has been fascinating from an ecological point of view, particularly an urban ecological point of view. We've all seen trite and sometimes falsified little Instagram examples of nature's return, but there are profound temporary systemic changes happening to cities and to human perceptions of cities. And I guess India must be experiencing a profound version of that with being able to see its blue skies again. So
yes, it's an unexpected pleasure to see blue sky.
Will the sight of what you are missing in terms of, or what you are suffering in terms of air pollution, will this convert into a long-term change?
This, fun enough, is the first question, so I'm not going to preempt it. There's one coming up. You promised us, Robert, a short reading before we go to questions. Have you got your book with you?
Yes, I do. I think I will keep it very short because time is tight. But I will just read a paragraph of a moment in East Greenland in what was then the summer of greatest melt, when we're a mile from a glacier's carving face, very far from anywhere else, and suddenly an astonishing event happens. And I'll just give you one paragraph. "There," shouts Bill, "but we're all already looking there, where the first block fell from the glacier's face, for it seems that a white freight train is driving fast out of the glacier, thundering laterally through space before toppling down towards the water. And then the white train is suddenly somehow pulling white wagons behind it from within the glacier, like an impossible magician's trick. And then the white wagons are followed by a cathedral, a blue cathedral of ice, complete with towers and buttresses, all of them joined together into a single unnatural sideways collapsing edifice. And then a whole city of blue and white follows the cathedral as we shout and step backwards involuntarily at the force of the event, even though it's occurring a mile away from us. and we call out to each other in the silence before the roar reaches us, even though we're only a few yards from each other. And then all of the hundreds of thousands of tons of that ice city collapse into the water of the fjord, creating an impact wave 40 or 50 feet high.
Oh, wow. Lovely.
And so it goes on. Yeah.
We have a stream of questions.
Right.
I'll start with Kalyani Ramchandran, who says, I've been following Robert Macfarlane's writing for years and recently loved his Instagram account, which I highly recommend. Anyone that's not following Rob should do so, including his spring 2 days ago. I'd love to know, she asks, how he came to nature writing in the first place and what his writing process is.
Well, thank you. And I should say that it was William Dalrymple that convinced me to join social media. So you've got him to blame, everybody. But I reckon. Well, nature writing. So I like many people. Certainly, I wrote some calamitously bad poetry when I was a young person, a child, really. Some of which is just ecologically illiterate and poetically gross, frankly. But so I was playing with nature in language from early on, but I grew up in a family of walkers and mountain lovers, and so it was always just continuous with what we did as a family, that we would head to the mountains.
My father also has a remarkable Instagram account.
My father is a brilliant photographer, yes, John Macfarlane. So and yeah, he really knows what he's doing with the camera. But I mess around with the words. So it was
some very sophisticated time-lapsey stuff he was doing last week, with sticking his camera in a hedge and watching meteor showers in Cumbria.
Yeah, he's permanently experimenting. He's where it's at. He's cutting edge Instagram. I just murmur on like the spring. But so I think nature was always there, but perhaps quite naively there from early on for me. And I loved knowing the names of birds, but didn't know many. I loved knowing the names of plants, but knew even fewer. But really it began with before nature writing was renamed as such in the early 2000s, it just began with a wish to fathom the mystery of why anyone would die for a mountain, because I was ready to die for a mountain in the mid 2000s, sorry, in the mid 1990s, and looking back, it's such a mystery. I had to write a book to work it out. And in terms of process, time. Long time. Willie and I sometimes talk to one another about, where are you with your book? Oh, 3 years in, early days.
Another 3 years to go. Deep time.
Exactly. So I gather. I think I would just add that I gather pebbles and scraps and feathers over a long period of time, and then they very, very slowly become a nest. So many notebooks, many files, many jottings.
Lovely question from Sachdev Ramakrishna, who asks, what may be some of the essential traits of great walker writers such as yourself, Patrick Leigh Fermor, Nan Shepherd, and Laurie Lee? He's been doing all the right research.
Well, I would add William Dalrymple to that list, and not just because he's here, but he was somebody whose work I read early in before I began writing, and really is absolutely part of that trajectory. I think a willingness to listen. You meet people openly when you're walking in a way that you don't when you're encased in vehicles of one kind or another. So there is an openness to the path which brings you into meetings. It's a companionable space. I talk more when I'm walking with someone, and very differently when I'm walking with someone, and I remember very differently. I find that this old idea of the walking mnemonic is a very powerful one. It's often increasingly proven to be medically true as well, and walking in terms of Alzheimer's and other degenerative diseases is proving a really interesting means of organizing memory. So I find I remember Alzheimer's. Yes. There's my grandfather, who I write briefly about in the old ways.
Chatwin here, or
yeah, Chatwin. What was his phrase? He called his legs "my two doctors," right? But yes, so listening, openness, and then I guess I've learned a lot about style as well, about short sentences and long sentences, and fitting the rhythm of writing, not just the propositional content, but the rhythm of prose to the rhythm of movement and of encounter. I learned a lot from some of the writers you mentioned there, Nan, Willie, Patrick. What about you, Willie? What do you think?
I know himself as a nature writer or travel writer, or both, or either or neither, or
writer. Just a writer. Actually, I'd probably say a teacher because that's what I do most of. But no, a writer. I think these streams converge and mingle in complex ways, and I think trying to separate out nature writing and travel writing and place writing and history, all of these things braid. They braid like when the tributaries meeting, and that's a good place to be. I think a fertile place for a writer to live.
Interesting question from Paul Harris here. He says, what is your sense of COVID time? It's been called Sisyphus time. Each day reboots and work away. And also time of being close to earth and stone. What are your thoughts?
Wow, well, that's a fascinating phrase for it, which I haven't heard. That combination of effort and contact. I think that's a very powerful image. It puts me in mind of Antaeus, the demigod who is wrestled by Hercules. Seamus Heaney calls him the mold hugger, and Antaeus only gains his strength when his feet are in contact with the earth. As soon as Hercules realizes this, he lifts him off the ground, and Antaeus is weak as a baby. But we are hearing things differently. Birdsong is bright on our ears. People are discovering their cities to have stars and blue skies again. London is a wildwood. It has nearly as many trees as it has citizens, and those trees are filled with birds in spring. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's been very striking that this pandemic has broadly coincided with spring. I think that has been a revelatory and indeed sort of curative or palliative, as it were, convergence of time. So for me, COVID time so far has been springtime, and a lot has been learnt and gained from that. I fear greatly the return of a second peak in the Northern Hemisphere in autumn and winter, and I think Sisyphus's stone will be much heavier if that happens.
Another question here. How long do you think we have the Earth before we completely decimate it? Take on it.
Yes, well, clearly the Earth will outlive us, and ecosystems will out-evolve us, and we will vanish as a species long before the sun burns the Earth to its cinder. But as I say earlier in Underland, I find the ethical alibi of deep time, when it's mobilized as a sort of excuse for human behavior, really problematic. I'm not saying the questioner has done this at all, but we often hear it, oh, it'll all be all right in the end. This is just a lotus eating, really. It's an abdication of responsibility. And I think viewed in deep time, actually, where we see ourselves as part of this extraordinary multi-billion year network of inheritance and onwards gift, this should brace us to much sharper thinking about legacy, really, about the now, but also about what we're leaving for generations beyond us. And I guess that's the deep time ethic that Underland argues for. So I can't put a figure on it, and I don't think we should do, but we should be looking ahead into the time of rivers, the time of forests, the time of mountains. They think differently to us, these ecosystems, these more than human presences, and we need to think a little more like them in the ways we organize our systems. And COVID is an opportunity to rethink some of these systems.
I think we have time for one last question, which is, what would be one nature reading that you would suggest apart from your book? Because I know what you're going to reply to that, I think.
One book, one text, one book. Well,
I know you do have two great favourites.
I do have two great favourites, but I must speak here, as I so often do, for the great Nan Shepherd, whose name has come up. Scottish writer. She was a female writer, which is relevant not to her, because she isn't writing squarely into the question of gender at all, but she just completely upended and turned turtle the very male conventions of writing about particularly mountain landscapes. And she wrote this book called The Living Mountain, which I ran an online lockdown reading group for on Twitter, which we walked together into the mountain, thousands of us, and it was wonderful. And Nan's wise vision and voice seems to me to be speaking very loudly now. And I'll give you one more. Robin Wall-Kimmerer, Braiding
I have to say J.A. Baker too, somewhere along the line.
Okay, all right, it's three. Robin Wall-Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, and I'll be in conversation with Robin, who's a plant scientist, a brilliant botanist, and a citizen of the Potawatomi people in America. Braiding Sweetgrass, a masterpiece. I'll be in conversation with her via Emergence magazine tomorrow night at 8 o'clock BST about that extraordinary book. And because Willie has invited it, J.A. Baker's The Peregrine. So there's three for the price of one. Braiding Sweetgrass, The Peregrine, and The Living Mountain. These are books.
Word about The Peregrine. Why is it? I mean, you've championed this book, brought it back into print.
Yeah, The Peregrine was written in 1967 at a time, and I think this does resonate now, at a time when peregrines were dying in Britain. They were dying because of pollution. So dieldrin poisoning and DDT was being absorbed by them in the food chains, and they were failing to breed. So it's a response by Baker to this moment of absolute ecological spasm in the long life of one species within a landscape. And it's this combination of scintillating clarity, magnesium burn intensity, and a sort of rage at the mistreatment of the more than human world. And
just spectacular prose.
Yes. You like it too, Willie? So Werner Herzog, the legendary filmmaker, runs what he calls the Rogue Film School, and it has 4 books on the reading list. One of them is the Bucolics. One of them is the Warren Report into JFK's assassination. Can't remember what the third is, but the other is Georg Buchner's Lentz, and then the fourth is Baker's The Peregrine. He says if you want to become a filmmaker, you need to read The Peregrine, and I thought that was fascinating.
So also being a believer in walking as a therapeutic thing, not just to yourself but for others.
Yes.
You're his father by walking at night, walking across.
No, it was his friend. Yes, walking on ice. Is that Lottie? Yeah. He. That's another astonishing walking book of the healing power of movement and nature.
Rob, we have 2 minutes left for you to tell us about your next project. You're already underway, I believe. Other than Gilgamesh, your next big book project.
Oh, well, like everyone, my thinking and world has been reset by the past 6 weeks. So I'm yes, apart from writing songs for Gilgamesh and then completing another book with Jackie Morris, The Lost Spells, which will come out in the autumn, which is a follow-up to this book, The Lost Words, which I think for children and celebrating language.
Sold some unbelievable number of copies and ended up in the Albert Hall.
Yes, it did. It became a prom. So we'll see if The Lost Spells takes flight. But I was going to write a big book about forests, but I don't know how feasible that is now. So called Heartwood, but we'll see. We'll see.
You don't think you can travel, or that your heart is now elsewhere with this?
No, I think, I very much wanted to write about India for the first time. Increasing numbers of Indian friends. Yuvan Aves, the remarkable young naturalist who you'll find on Instagram. Many others increasingly involved with protest groups and movements in India, and very, very much wanted to write about India's trees and forests and people's relationships to them in cities. And not only India, but it was going to be a big part of the book. So we will see now. I just, like everyone, will need to work out how the world looks and feels when we emerge from this.
It's very promising for Jaipur, though, if we get to see more of you in India.
If Heartwood gets written, Willie, you won't be able to get rid of me.
Very, very good. There's one last question here. You write in Underland that we need to resist the inertial thinking that all life is equally insignificant in the face of eventual ruin. What are the positive changes you would want to fight for?
What are the positive dangers?
Changes you would want.
The positive changes. I mean, the first and simplest win is our air. Is our air pollution. I mean, we are losing so many people globally to this catastrophe. We can't see our skies anymore. Our lungs are. I mean, everyone in India knows this better than I do. But there is cities can change now. It's happening in Milan. Scotland has just freed up £10 million to put up pop-up pavements, because social distancing means that pedestrians can't walk as close. They need more pavement space. Great. More pavement space means fewer cars. City centres are just going to have to be repurposed for cycling's up 35% in Scotland. I'm sure India is seeing similar changes in road use. Temporary changes are coming in.
Go out here, we get whacked with a flatty if we leave the house.
If you leave the house, right? Well, there are so many wins to be made fast now in the ways our cities, which our organisms are designed, and so that would be the first quick positive change now. And bring your skies back, bring your air back. This is the chance to do it.
There's another question here. Sanjoy, have we got a moment for another question? What's the timing? I've been getting messages from...
Take a quick question, and we're out of time, but take the question.
Is now the time when nature writing should be introduced along with fictionalized novels, travelogues, giving it the importance it deserves? Is the moment come for nature writing? Is this the great moment now for the genre to take center stage?
It depends. Well, my first thought is nature writing's had a busy decade anyway, and but the second is that it depends what you mean by nature, and the nature of Underland, the nature I'm interested in, is about viruses. It's about nuclear waste. It's about melting ice. It's about gamma rays, as well as about charismatic megafauna and the birds that fill our everyday ears. These are all nature writing. So I think a wide nature writing, if that's what we want to call it, that draws in peril and risk and love and hope and fear, and what it means to have a hurt human heart, and as well as what it means to see through the eyes of a tiger or a magpie. This is nature writing, and we need that now more than ever. Yeah.
Macfarlane, thank you very, very much indeed, and see you in Jaipur.
Thank you. I see you in Jaipur, Willie. Thank you all very much. Lovely.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you so much, William. That was just so lyrical. The birds that fill our lyrical ears and our beautiful skies. And truly, please do come to Jaipur at the earliest. And you can come overland, more or less. And we promise you our forests and our incredible protest groups who've been fighting for the environment. But thank you all for watching and being such a great audience. I'm really sorry William couldn't field all the questions that you've been posing. People have written in from New York and UK and America. We will send some of these questions on to Robert Macfarlane and ask him to answer it and get back to you. Please do remember to log in on Saturday, the 2nd of May, and Sunday, the 3rd of May, for another set of great sessions brought to you by JLF's Brave New World. On 2nd May, we will be presenting The Crown, based on his award-winning play, The Audience. Peter Morgan turned the life of Queen Elizabeth II from the 1940s to modern times into one of the most successful television shows of all time, winning Golden Globes and Emmys along with extraordinary global viewing figures. Here he talks to filmmaker Ritesh Patra about how he wrote The Jewel in the Netflix Crown. This will be at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 3 p.m. British Summer Time, and 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The second session on Saturday, the 2nd of May, will be with Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw on COVID, healthcare, and life sciences. An important and urgent conversation between Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Executive Chairperson Biocon Limited, and writer and journalist Samant Subramaniam on the challenges of the pandemic and India's response to it. This will be played out at 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. British Summer Time, and 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Look forward to seeing you all on Saturday, the 2nd of May. We'd like to thank our radio partner, Red FM Bajate Raho. And for all of those who want to stay on and haven't got enough of the JLF stage, here's an extract from the Jaipur Music Stage archives. The Rizwan Muazzam Qawwali Group and the Medieval Pandits in a collaborative concert. The Rizwan Muazzam Qawwali Group is led by Rizwan and Muazzam. They played their first major concert in 1998 at the WOMAD Rivermead Festival in Reading, England. The two brothers come from a direct family line of Qawwals that span over 5 centuries. They've been very popular performers on Coke Studio. Medieval Pandits, the New Delhi-based duo of Gaurav Rayana and Tapan Raj, are known as the Chemical Brothers of India. For years, their pulsing, driving electronica has pulled from an eclectic variety of sounds from across the planet. Enjoy the music. Remember to log back on next Saturday. For those of you who wouldn't have caught the first bit of it because of the technical issue, Remember, this is going to be on our YouTube channel. All you need to do is log on. Thank you all very much and have a great day.
Salsa de gaga bomba.